What's up, everybody? It's that animation.
Hurry up!
I'm trying! What the hell? Where are we? I can't even see where I'm going! What the hell is going on?
I don't know. It's getting closer.
What the fuck is it?
I don't know. I didn't get a good look at it.
Are you sure it's even back there? I think we're just freaking out.
Oh, shit. Keep going.
Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck. Oh, fuck.
Run!
Shit! Ow! Ow! Fuck!
Shit.
Oh.
Get up.
Okay, hold on. Oh, shit.
Come on.
Oh, fuck. Fuck!
Oh, God.
What's up, everybody? It's That Anime Show, Halloween edition. I am your host, Victor Costly, and if you're wondering what happened to your usual hosts, Terri and Tatum, well, they're being tended to by my faithful companion. I like to call him Steven. We have collected stories, scenes, and attempts at musicality brought to you by some of the finest voice actors the anime industry has to offer. The stories are guaranteed to delight, terrify, and perhaps arouse you. Our first story is a fan submission. It comes to us from Caitlin Perez and is read by Caitlin Glass. It is titled Orange Chalk, and it will chill you to the bone.
The paranormal has always been a part of my family. My sisters blame my mother blames my grandmother, but it just seems to never go away. When my mother was just a small child, she would always complain that demons would carry her from room to room in my grandmother's house. Of course, there was never any way to prove it. My grandmother would wake up in the middle of the night hearing my mother screaming and crying from one of the rooms in the house. My mother would be on the floor, still asleep, writhing as if she were in pain, and my grandmother would have to wake her up and calm her down before taking her back to her room. At one point in my grandmother's life, she'd become engrossed in witchcraft, and though I wasn't alive at the time, my siblings and I always heard strange stories about my grandmother from our aunts and uncles. This is why my mother blames my grandmother. I honestly don't blame anyone. In one house that I lived in with my family for multiple years, I seemed to deal with more problems involving paranormal activity than anyone else. It all started when we first moved in. The older couple that sold the house to my parents were unfortunate to lose many children during pregnancies and finally gave up on having them. When they figured it would be just the two of them, they decided to sell their 4-bedroom house. Since it was my 2 siblings and my parents, it was a perfect house for us. But my bedroom was probably the worst. During the night, I would hear these wails that sounded kind of like a cat that was suffering, as if it were on the verge of dying. On multiple occasions, I would go outside to check out the backyard, since that was where my window faced, and instead of seeing a cat of any sort, the wailing would stop. And instead, a small boy would be perched up on our swing set. Being the child that I was, I would tell him that he should go home, that his parents weren't here, and that it was too late to be outside playing. Back then, I didn't realize that the little boy wasn't actually flesh and bone. As I got older, I started to just ignore the noises and the little boy in the backyard, but when I was around 14, I remember staying up late and talking on the phone with a friend. I knew I wasn't supposed to be up so late, but it didn't really matter to me. I was officially a teenager, so I could do what I want. But it was raining outside, and the lights kept flickering whenever it thundered. Finally, the lights went out completely, and the house phone shut off along with it. I was left to sit there and wait for the electricity to go back on. That night, the wailing was louder than ever. It sounded as if it were closer than usual, and definitely not outside my window. So I stood up in the middle of my room, looking around to see if I could make out where the little boy was. Suddenly, the lights flickered once more, and I could see his figure running out from under my bed and out the door, leaving in his wake orange chalk that had been stuffed under my bed with the rest of my chalk set. When the lights finally came back on my wall next to my bed was written the word escape, but it looked as if a tiny hand had trailed through it, smearing the word. Till this day, I still remember my mother coming in my room asking me why I would write that on my wall and having no explanation to tell her except that it was the little boy, not me.
Yes, we've all blamed it on some phantom little boy at some point, haven't we? Our next story is a personal account from Josh Greeley. A story about bizarre occurrences that happen at a rock church.
If as isolated as Clifton was from the rest of the world, my house was even more so. I lived about 3 miles outside of town, and in a little valley. So and there's no artificial light out there whatsoever, except for what comes from the house. So if there's no moon out, if you look outside the window, it's pitch darkness. You can't see 2 feet in front of you. So growing up, me and my little brother and all of our friends, especially mine, because we would go out in the dead of night and do stupid shit, we've seen our fair share of tons of ridiculousness and craziness and downright spookiness. But this one in particular always kind of stood out as one of the best moments and definitely the scariest and the most afraid I've ever been in my life. There's a small church called the Old Rock Church. It's actually listed in one of the, I can't remember the actual official name of the book, but there was a book that came out years ago about the most well-known haunted places in America, and it was like number 3. And so this was fairly well known, and it's right there on my back door. So the guy, there's an old man who owns the Old Rock Church that it sits on his property. So, and there's gates and all sorts of warning signs, no trespassers. Nobody uses a church anymore because it's run down and it's actually really dangerous to go into it. But dumb fuck kids, what else are we going to do late night? And this was around Halloween, so even better. So we go out to the Old Rock Church and we're in my pickup truck, and about a quarter of the mile away from it, I'd have to turn my headlights off, or at least dim down to just the dim lights, and kind of use my emergency blinkers as a light source so we could see where we were going. Because that dude is famous for being able to hear a car coming from a mile away, or just know that someone's coming. And if he catches you on the property, you're pretty much going to be spending the night in jail. So we had to be really cautious. We get there. We're in my truck, and we leave it running, and a couple of people chicken out and decide that they're just going to stay in the truck and be the lookouts. Problem is, we don't have cell phones. There's no reception out there, so if we do get busted, they're going to fucking drive off, and we're going to be left alone to fend for ourselves. So me, my friend Mark, and I think my friend Steven go inside the church. We had to hop a fence and go, run through a whole bunch of just grassland, basically, with tall grass and spooky in it itself, and it kind of through a graveyard, because there's a graveyard out there too. So it's the perfect setup, and there's barely any moon out at that night, so it was perfectly dark and very spooky. We get inside the church, and it's one of those places that has that kind of atmosphere that there's no sound whatsoever. Like, you can hear yourself, you can hear your heartbeat in there because you're not hearing anything else. It's like everything's just dead. And the hardwood floors, so every step you take is this loud, creaky, almost, it's kind of cheesy almost, how ridiculous it sounds, kind of like out of a movie. Creaky floors, and one of the most well-known things about it, one of the reasons it's deemed so dangerous, is that when you first walk in, directly above the entrance is the choir loft, and the choir loft is tilting to the right and going down. It's so unmaintained that it's on the verge of collapse. So we think, of course, what better place to go? We start going up the stairs, and we get up into the choir loft, and it's creaking even louder. And we're like, oh, we're going to die tonight. But, of course, nothing happens, thankfully, yet. So we go past the choir, And we're just kind of standing up there looking over the church, and we're like, well, this is disappointing. There's nothing happening. We went through a graveyard. There wasn't anything out there. But at this point, we were almost hoping that the old man would catch us, because then at least there would be some excitement out of this whole thing. But we're about to leave, and Steven says, hey, what's that? And we look over, and there's a door. It was obscured in the shadow in the corner, but he was just able to make it out. And we're like, oh, well, fuck it, let's check it out. We open the door, and there's another set of stairs. It's very small. It's not like a full flight, but it's maybe, it's a good maybe half flight of stairs that we then traverse. And when we get up there, there's an organ. That's where they kept the organ. It was just this little room. And the only thing that's in there is the organ and a stainless glass window. And at this point, the moon had actually come out from behind the clouds. And so there's a little bit of light coming in through that stained glass window, and all we see, and it's just kind of highlighting the organ. So we're like, oh, well, this is kind of cool. Didn't know that this was up here. And that's when, like, seemingly we start hearing wind from nowhere, and the organ starts playing. So we freaked the fuck out pretty, like, instantly. We just stand still. We haven't freaked out enough to start running away, but we're on alert. And the organ just keeps playing. I can't, to this day, I don't know what tune it was. And I know for a fact, because considering how old it was, that unless the old man just knew that people would go in there and decided to replace the organ with one that could play itself, this is an old organ, so I know it's not capable of doing this. So we're just kind of sitting there and staring at it. And Mark goes, guys, we gotta get the fuck out of here. Let's just leave. Don't even question it. This didn't happen. Let's just go. And we're about to turn, and Steven, again, what the fuck is that? And we look over at the stainless glass window. A shadow had come in, and there's no ledge out there. There's no way that anybody could be standing outside this window, but there is a shadowy human figure that then lifts up what we assume is a hand and starts tapping on the glass. At this point, we pretty much need to change our underwear. We leave, we fly through that door. Like, I don't think I even touched a single step of that little flight coming from the organ room. We crash onto the choir loft floor again. I hear it creak like this thing's about to come down. We're like, oh, we're gonna die. We're so gonna die. And we get outside. We go down the spiral staircase. Steven, I think, actually jumped from the choir loft down to the bottom floor, didn't even bother with the stairs. We go out the front door, run. We're running through the graveyard. We're running through the grass. We hop over the fence, and we're just screaming. And the guys, and we're like, start the car, start the truck, start it. And they're asking, what? What's wrong? Is the old man? They think that the old man's come out, and he's like calling the cops. No. So I hop in the front seat. I start to turn the key, and the car won't fucking start. It's just dead. It's like you just hear like the clicks, and we're like, oh, guys, please tell me you didn't leave like the headlights on. And no, they hadn't done anything, because the headlights would have, shown the old man that we were out here just parking. So we're waiting for it to start. I'm turning it like 5, 6, 10 times, and it won't do anything. And we're freaking the fuck out. And finally, it turns on. And when it does, right in front of the car, and this is the story all about how my life got turned upside down. I'd like to take a minute. Just sit right there, and I'll tell you how I became the prince of a town called Bel Air.
Ah, yes, Josh. Yo, Holmes. Smell your leisure. For all of you skeptics out there, you need only speak with my faithful companion Steven to know that these stories are true. For he has experienced them as well, and can attest to their supernatural nature. There are those that relish the month of October. I personally would like to know, what do you like most about Halloween?
I mean, I do enjoy seeing all of the little people, like children little people, not like me little people, dressed up in crazy costumes and getting all excited and getting into character. And I like seeing everybody's decorations. Those are cool. When I was a kid, I loved candy, but now I should probably lay off. Just do cupcakes.
As a kid, it used to be looking into strangers' houses. I know that's terrifyingly creepy, but I grew up in very ghetto houses and apartments. Well, trailers and apartments, never a house. So we always, me and my cousins always drove to the nice neighborhoods to go trick-or-treating. So I was always fascinated to look what inside a real house. And so, but as an adult, I really like seeing yard decorations. I know that could be a cop-out, but I really like seeing how big and involved neighbors get, or what a, complete and utter disaster some people's houses are.
Definitely dressing up. That's absolutely the most fun part. Now, it's true, like, being in anime, we could dress up whenever we wanted to at a con or something, but Halloween's fun to see everybody else do it.
Getting candy, I mean, good candy, like, the sweethearts and the stuff. Like, whenever someone hands you Almond Joys, you are legitimately angry at them for a moment, Pennies are worse. It's usually elderly people that hand you these bad gifts. I like being frightened. That's kind of rare, but it's fun when it happens. Like this one time, this guy was I didn't know he was a guy. I thought he was a decoration. He was like, all laying down and like hooded and in a black thing, and like his leg was like really skewed, and there was like the bowl of candy, and it was like the best candy, of course. And I love my candies, so me and my couple friends were like, all right, we're gonna go for this candy, even though it's really scary and dark, like over at his house. So we're walking, and then of course he like jumps out, has like a hatchet, and is chasing us, and it was terrible. Yeah, I was like 8. I might have peed a little.
All of the cool decorations and like the spiderweb stuff. The spiderweb stuff that like it comes in, it's all like compacted like a pillow, but then you stretch it out and it makes like eerie cobwebby stuff. I like that. That's my favorite. It's the spiderweb stuff. And pumpkins. I love carving pumpkins. That's really fun. I also really like the candy. And I like that. Yeah, that's really, I like dressing up. That's fun. I never dress up as anything scary. I just like pretty dress up time. I'm not really a scary person.
I've always been a night person, even when I was really, really little. So I think the best thing about the holiday is the fact that when the sun goes down, for like the only night a year that anyone does it, everyone, all the kids, all the parents, everyone comes out of the woodwork and just kind of just lays siege to the neighborhood, which is really cool. It made me feel really part of a community when I was a kid, because being such a night owl myself, I was usually the only person that paid attention to anything that went on after dark. Always felt like the only person in the world. So Halloween was the one night when I kind of felt like I was in my element.
Decorating my apartment, because that's an excuse for me to pull out all my ventriloquist dummies and set them out and not freak people out. So that's pretty awesome.
The weather. The weather and the decorations, it's always been my favorite thing. I think the weather especially, because it's kind of like the herald of the 3 great holidays. October, November, December always were the most magical to me, and I think it's always because of the weather. Everything just seems more serene when it's cold.
We are all terrified by that which is unknown. For some of us, it is the upstairs, which is precisely the title of the next story, submitted by an anonymous fan, read by Alexis Tipton.
When I was a child, I lived in a rented 2-floor house. Both my parents worked, so I was often alone when I came home from school. One early evening, when I came home, the house was still dark. I called out, "Mom?" And I heard a voice say, "Yes," from upstairs. I called my mom again and again got the same "yes" reply. I felt she was calling back at me and climbed up the stairs. When I reached the first floor, I called her once more, and the voice, "Yes," came from the furthest room. I felt uneasy, but a strong urge to see my mother, and I started to walk towards the room. But just that moment, I heard the front door downstairs open, and my mother came in, carrying a lot of shopping bags. "Sweetie, are you home?" my mother called in a cheery voice. Hearing her voice made me feel instantly better, and I turned back to go downstairs at once. But not before I had a quick glance towards the room. While I watched from the top of the stairs, the door to the room slowly opened a crack. For a brief moment, I saw something strange in there. A pale face staring back at me.
Yes. Isn't it wonderful to hear a story about an albino home invader? I love it myself. Our next story comes to us from Aaron Dismuke, a man known to the show as a royal pain in the ass. He will be reading from the Zombie Survival Guide, an invaluable resource that will keep you alive when the apocalypse comes.
1954 AD, Thon Hoa, French Indochina. This passage is taken from a letter written by Jean-Bert Lacoteur, a French businessman living in the former colony. The game is called Devil Dance. A living human is placed in a cage with one of these creatures. Our human has with him only a small blade, perhaps 8 centimeters at most. Will he survive his waltz with the living corpse? If not, how long will it last? Bets are taken for these and all other variables. We keep a stable of them, these fetid gladiators. Most are turned from the victims of a failed match. Some we take from the street. We pay their families well. God have mercy on me for this unimaginable sin. This letter, along with a sizable fortune, arrived in La Rochelle, France, 3 months after the fall of French Indochina to Ho Chi Minh's communist guerrillas. The fate of Lacauteur's Devil Dance is unknown. No further information has been uncovered. 1 year later, Lacauteur's body arrived in France, badly decomposed, with a bullet in the brain. The North Vietnamese coroner's explanation was suicide.
And here I thought the devil's dance was the Macarena. See, on this day we even resurrect old references. As I hear these stories and look at myself in the mirror, noticing my beautiful crush velvet outfit, adjusting the ruffles on my blouse, I wonder, what are your favorite Halloween costumes?
In terms of like Halloween types of costumes, I really like costumes that are more like gothic and gory because more work goes into them and like fewer people are willing to go that extra step. So I always appreciate it when people do. It's fun.
Favorite Halloween costume that I've worn would be my turtle costume. I was like 6 for that one. I was just a turtle, like not a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. I was a legit turtle, and my grandma helped me make it. It was just like a big shell, and it was green. It was nice, Everyone accused me of being a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle. That frustrated me because I was just a turtle. I wasn't anything special. I didn't have any weapons, so clearly not a turtle. Yeah.
My favorite Halloween costume is Peter Pan because I'm a Disney nut and I kind of look like Peter Pan. I've been Peter Pan 3 times now in different costumes throughout my life, so that would definitely be my favorite.
I was Darkwing Duck when I was in the 2nd grade, and it was awesome. When there's trouble, you call DW.
One of the favorite costumes that I wore when I was in 5th grade, there were 5 girls that I went to school with, and we took oversized pillowcases and we made dominoes. So we were all dominoes, and we wore the pillowcase with like leggings and a black t-shirt. So I thought that was a cool costume.
When I was younger, my granny made me a spider costume, and she took black pantyhose and stuffed them with plushy stuff, like filler, for stuffed animals. And I had like all these legs and my head. She put pantyhose on my head, and it's just a really freaking awesome costume.
Last year I was a peacock, and so I was a male peacock though, to be clear. And so I put all of these crazy feathers in my hair and like braided them in. I had like ridiculous amount of peacock feathers in my hair, and I was very excited. And the whole point was that I was a dude, and because girl peacocks are brown and boy peacocks are pretty. And so I was this peacock, and then everyone was like, "Oh, what are you?" I'm like, "A cross-dresser." So that was my favorite. And then my favorite that I've ever seen is this guy in the city that when I was in college in Denton. This guy came out one night, and he was dressed as a vending machine, And like he was like in the vending machine and like it worked. Like you could put stuff in and it like rotated and like dropped stuff. That was awesome. No, my favorite costume that I've ever worn, I was a ninja one year. That was really cool. I bedazzled my face and I found other ninjas. That was pretty awesome.
Okay, so growing up, I didn't really celebrate Halloween in the traditional sense, whatever that really means. But I would always go to stuff at my church or at a friend's church, and they had these like Hallelujah nights, which is awesome. Like, I'm not knocking those whatsoever. But throughout the years, the church may have certain rules about what you can wear as a costume and what you can't. And so it was usually like nothing scary, nothing bloody. And I wouldn't do that anyway, but they'd even go so far as to say, well, you can't be magical and you can't be blah, blah, blah. So it really limits you to being like Bible characters and farm animals. And so I decided that one year, I think I was like in 4th grade, I was going to be Amy Grant, because I loved her. Like, I sing her music all the time. And so that's what I was. And this was like Amy Grant and her poofy hair and goofy hat stage. So that was me. That's probably my favorite Halloween costume of my childhood.
And now for something truly terrifying. Something blood-curdling. Something that will make you tear at your own flesh with your fingernails, stripping them to bone, crying into the night, praying for your own death. This is from Chris Burnett. I am so sorry for this.
Here we go. Here we hit the play button and you can find a soft seat. This show is full of tricks so we can offer you a hot treat. Funimation Nation getting crazy tonight. It's that anime show and we're turning up the mic. Let us drop a fresh verse. It's October 31st. Here we go. That anime show a little different than it seems. Tune in with a friend, start listening, cause you know it's Halloween. Turn it up. This podcast is broadcast from a haunted home, delivered straight from the past and the ghost of Romeo. You might think that you're dreaming when you're just Halloween and seen a ghost named Brina cartooning through your home. You may hear some voices, but a mouths are not shown. It's that anime show, chilling you to your bone. That anime show, talking about VO. What's that anime show? Turn it up, here we go, here we go. That anime show, a little different than it seems. Tune in with a friend, start listening, cause you know it's Halloween. Come on! Terri Doty in the box with the J. Michael twist. We got Steve the engineer serving up the playlist. Yeah, crazy shit happens when there is a full moon. Let me hear it for the spirits that are chilling in the booth. I said the clock stops, your doors all locked. We will haunt your airwaves and we'll make your ears pop. The show is so wheels off, it makes this rap beat stop. Tick, tock. That anime show, talking about VO. That anime show, turn it up, here we go, here we go. That anime show, a little different than it seems. Tune in with a friend, start listening, cause you know it's Halloween. If you hear feedback during playback, that's all right. It's okay to open mouth react. Here we go. That anime show, a little different than it seems. Tune in with a friend, start listening, cause you know it's Halloween. Repeat the chorus. Here we go. That anime show, a little different than it seems. Tune in with a friend, start listening, cause you know it's Halloween.
Don't touch that dial. And I'm out.
Oh, that was terrifying. Terrifyingly good. Terrifyingly street. Our next tale is called Imperfect Transition and was sent to us by Ultra. It is read by Brina the Boss Palencia.
I was sitting in the upstairs office of the museum with a cup of coffee when it happened. It had been a long day, and I'd set the work experience kid on the seemingly unfuck-upable task of dusting the exhibits, after repeating my warning, of course, that some of them must not be touched or opened. A terrified scream quickly strangled by a building-shaking thump and an awful rending sound brought me rushing downstairs. The mirror room. I knew it. In there hung an ancient mirror about a foot around made of polished obsidian. Behind the glass walls of its display case, it was harmless, although people amusingly reported seeing the face of an evil hag in it on occasion. Looking at it unprotected was madness, though, certainly for those without my knowledge of the old ways. I arrived in the mirror room, and a horrible smell hung in the air. On the floor lay half a body, the lower half, still in the clothes I recognized from earlier. The skin had been stretched purple and torn away, and the organs inside that hadn't been torn free leaked their contents onto the floor. The legs were at the bottom of a maroon spray that started below the wooden case of the mirror, and the hip bone lay almost against the wall. The case was broken, the wooden sides pushed outwards. Clumps of hair, matted with skin and blood, stuck to the frame of the mirror. Concentrating now, I stepped in front of the black disc, my sandals carefully placed to either side of the bile-sprayed limbs and pool of blood on the floor. Looking into the dark reflection of the room, I saw my double once more. In her hand was a pale arm that led down to a broken form and a trail of darkness. Sure enough, when she lifted the half-corpse into the air, I recognized the shattered and stretched face.
What a delightful story. I too have a mirror room. I constructed it after watching the movie American Psycho. Oftentimes there is a horrible smell and an old hag in that room as well. I call it my happy place.
You're mad! You're not dressed as a cat, madam. You're dressed as a whore with a tail. Get off my lawn!
My God, that brings up an interesting question. What is your least favorite Halloween costume?
I really loathe when people come to my door trick-or-treating and they're not even bothering to pretend to be in a costume. They're just wearing what they would wear any day of the week. And they can't even give me the perfunctory trick-or-treat. They just get a bag in their hand, they hold it out, they say, "What's up?" And I'm like, what are you supposed to be, a douchebag? And I hate that. I hate that. It's Halloween. If you're going to go begging door to door for candy, then you should at least put some effort into it, you asshole.
I think the one that it was a lot of fun, but it became a giant hassle. I was a Godzilla. I think it was 5th or 6th grade, and because Darkwing Duck was 2nd grade, and my mother made this elaborate, awesome Godzilla costume. Like I had a full-on face and everything, full body, had the spinal things going down his back and a tail. And the problem was, people kept stepping on my tail and pulling on it all throughout the fucking school day. And then it's like, to add insult to injury, the coach, when we went to PE and we played dodgeball that day, all day long, it was nothing but dodgeball. If my tail got hit, I was considered out because it was part of my costume. So people kept aiming for my giant fucking tail.
Cheerleaders and football players, I think that's a total cop-out and not original at all.
Okay, I believe I touched on this last year, but it's worth repeating because I was subject to it quite often. Wearing your parents' clothes. That fucking sucks. Wearing my mom's, pantsuit and holding, her heavy-ass briefcase and suddenly I'm a lawyer, that's a horrible costume. Don't do that to your kids.
One time when I was 13, I decided to be a hippie vampire, and that didn't work out very well. So I think that was my least favorite Halloween costume.
It wasn't my least favorite the year that I did it, I thought it was brilliant, but it was not executed very well. But I was the weird kid who said, I found an alien baby doll. And I was like, this is perfect. I'm going to be an alien orphan with my baby brother and carry him around and get an alien mask. And I don't know what I wore, if it was overalls with patches on them and my hair was disheveled. But everyone was like, what are you? I'm an alien orphan. My parents dropped me off of the spaceship with my baby brother. Nobody got it, but I thought it was really clever to come up with at 8. So that was me, weirdo.
Princess costumes. Yeah. There's just no point. That's just a girl's excuse to dress up like a princess. And, yeah, there's nothing, cool about it or, exciting. It's not classic like a turtle. It's just kind of, girly and pink, and it kind of ruins the whole Halloween vibe, honestly.
To me, wearing lingerie and like cat ears, or like wearing lingerie and like, whatever, like a nurse hat, like I hate chicks that do that. It's such a cop-out. It's like, oh, you're a sexy nurse. Oh, you're a sexy cat. Oh, you're a sexy plumber. And I have seen sexy plumber before. I've seen sexy cop, sexy plumber, sexy, like the guy that writes the parking ticket, sexy parking ticket attendant. Like, I hate it when girls are like, oh, it's cool. It's whatever. Like if you want to wear a trashy outfit, wear a trashy outfit. But you don't have to wait for Halloween, I've never been a big fan of that. Sexy saloon girl. Like, can't you just be something cool? Like, I don't know. Maybe that's just me. Like, I like being pretty as much as the next girl, but like, do you really need an excuse to wear a corset? I don't. If I want to wear a corset, I'll wear a corset. I don't need Halloween for it. Like, I don't understand what the big deal is. Like, just be yourself. And then on Halloween, you can be a zombie or something. Something cool.
This next tantalizing tale of terror is a story about a boy and his doll. It is read by Tia Ballard. It is called Robert the Doll.
As many of you know, I love dolls. I love ventriloquist dummies. I love Chucky. I love all manner of doll. The creepier, the better. I like to think of myself as the puppet mom. The dolls that nobody else loves, I will take in. And I've had haunted dolls and things like that. And this is actually a story that I heard while I was in high school that creeped me out. As a matter of fact, on many occasions, the thought of this story sent me into my parents' bedroom to sleep with them overnight in high school. So I'm glad to share it with you now. This is a true story about Robert the Doll. In the early 20th century, there was a family called the Otto family. They were very wealthy, and they had a son named Robert Eugene Otto. And at 4 years old, he was given a doll by one of his maids. People say that she did voodoo. That's the whole thought surrounding this, is that this woman did voodoo, and she had a score to settle with the Otto family. Not long after she gave him this doll, she was fired, and that's where they think that the drama surrounding this doll began. Back in those days, it was normal to give a doll that was the likeness of a child to a child. So this doll looked like Robert Eugene. It was dark-eyed like he was, around the same height. It even had real hair. And on this doll was one of Robert Eugene's own outfits, a little sailor costume. So yeah, she gave him this doll, and he was immediately connected with it. They went everywhere together. He bathed with this doll. He slept with this doll. He ate with this doll. And people thought it was just a normal relationship between a boy and his doll. But soon after they had fired that maid, for one reason or another, things started to turn a little creepy. Robert Eugene became violent at some time. Sometimes he would blame it on Robert for him outlashing. There were times when his parents would hear him talking to someone, and someone in a completely different voice answering back and giggling while they were in the room. He was in a room by himself. They thought it was him doing another voice, but over time they kind of realized something's going on here. He stopped hanging out with friends. He only spent his time with Robert in a room by himself. One instance in particular was his parents woke up to the sound of their son screaming, ran to his room, found the door locked, had to break down the door, found toys ripped apart, furniture overturned, and there was Robert Eugene in his bed, trembling, shaking. And when they asked what happened, he said Robert did it. Robert was the name of his doll. He actually gave the doll his own name, and he went by Eugene after that. He said, Robert did it, Robert did it. And he was so frightened. And his parents decided to take action right then. They locked Robert in a trunk and decided that's the end of it. No more. Even though their son begged them, please don't do this, they did it. And that was the end of things until his parents died. Robert Eugene got married, and they moved back into his childhood home, where they found the old trunk with Robert still in it. And immediately when they opened this trunk, it rekindled this relationship gone. Everything was all about Robert suddenly. The doll actually frightened the wife as soon as she saw it. It was ugly to her, but he wouldn't have it. He wanted Robert to have his own room. And that's what happened. They put him in the attic, and she wouldn't give him any more than that. So months went by, and one day she came home, and suddenly Eugene was angry with her, saying Robert was mad, Robert wanted his own room, and I gave Robert his own room. And he gave Robert what was a turret room, and what that room is it is a vaulted ceiling that comes to a point, and there's kind of like a hectagon shape around the room with windows. So it had all these windows facing the street, and he said Robert wanted a view. So he set Robert right there in the turret room. Kids were frightened to go by this house because they saw Robert glaring at them. They would see the doll move from window to window, making faces at them. A plumber at one time went into the turret room to do some work, ran away screaming because he said he heard a doll giggling. So it's just a really frightening scenario. And over the years, Robert Eugene got increasingly more violent, and every time something happened, he would blame it on Robert. He died in 1974 with Robert by his side, locked in the turret room. Not long after that, a family moved in, and they had a little girl. They found Robert, after they moved in, they heard the pitter-patter of little feet actually in the attic of the place. When Robert Eugene died, his wife moved Robert to the attic and sold the house. She didn't want anything to do with the doll anymore. So when these people moved in and they heard this pitter-pattering of little feet, they assumed it would just be a rat or a mouse. So when they went upstairs to check, they actually found Robert sitting in a corner by himself in the attic. They brought him down, and their 10-year-old girl immediately took a liking to him, loved him. And it was just the same type of thing, a kind of this obsession. She wouldn't play with anyone else. It was just her and Robert. She would eat with them, insist that he would go everywhere with her, until one night she began to have nightmares, really horrible nightmares with blood and guts and just really bad things. And she would wake up, and Robert the doll would be sitting at the foot of her bed, just looking at her, not moving, but just looking at her like a piercing stare. You know how dolls have piercing stares sometimes. One time she had a really, really bad dream, woke up with a pillow over her face. She said, and will admit 30 years later, she still gets trembles when I've read interviews with this woman, still gets trembles thinking about it, saying the doll wanted to kill her. She had a pillow over her face, and there was pressure against it, and she fought back and pushed it off, and it had been Robert that was pushing a pillow into her face, trying to kill her. And to this day, she says, that doll wanted to kill me, that doll wanted to kill me. After all that, the family gave the doll, because Robert Eugene turned into like a famous painter or something, they gave the doll to a museum, the Martello Museum in Florida. That's where Robert is now. He's under a glass case, and they say he's cursed. He has a soul, and he's cursed. If you go to this museum, you have to ask his permission to take his picture. If you take it anyway and you don't ask him first, your camera will break, your pictures will come out fuzzy if it doesn't break, or something bad will happen in your family. And in fact, along this museum are bulletin boards full of apology letters begging Robert to forgive so-and-so, forgive me for not asking for your permission, forgive me. Just forgive me, please. Please stop cursing my family. I'm so sorry, Robert. They've seen him move. They've said that his expression changes depending on who's around him. They actually had to put him in a glass case because they said they would find him in different areas of the museum. And they leave him peppermints because apparently he loves peppermints. Every so often they'll drop a few peppermints in his glass case, and the next morning they'll just be wrappers.
My goodness. Sure beats the hell out of a Barbie now, doesn't it? Robert, I believe you've inspired me to go to the museum. I would like to now invite our listeners to take a stroll with Ryan Reynolds as she reads The Hiker, a submission by Black-Eyed Clown.
I was through hiking the Appalachian Trail last year when I got lost and found myself off the trail in a strange, dark hollow with heavy moss and one running stream. It was getting dark and starting to rain. I found a cave just above the creek bed, and there were no bear tracks, so I went in for shelter. Sometime in the night, a bear did come, right into the cave, and I had no way out. Keeping my head, I crawled deeper into the cave and found a passage too small for the bear to fit. It led to a long crawlway ending in a little alcove. I had no light, and I was terrified, but the sound of the bear in the bigger room faded away. This new room was cozy, with what felt like mounds of soft moss and crackly leaves all over the floor. A breeze blew through, and the leaves, though I couldn't see them, seemed to move all over, and they tickled me all night long, making it hard to sleep. The next morning, I crept back out to see if the bear was gone. He was, so I exited back into the hollow. I had a terrible rash all over my body from the itchy bedding I'd slept on, and couldn't stop scratching as I gathered up my stuff and went down to the creek looking for a road and some directions back to the trail. I found another trail along the creek, and in a few hours, it ended at a dirt road. There I rested, trying to decide which way to walk for help. My skin was bleeding in spots now, and pustules were forming at the itchiest places. I thought I might need some cream or something. The game warden jeep came around the bend, and when the warden saw me sitting at the trailhead, he stopped. "You planning on going up there?" he asked, gesturing up the trail I had come down. "No, actually," I began, but the itching on my skin made me stop short to scratch. "Well, if you are, just stay the hell clear of Spider Nest Cave."
You know, if I had a nickel for every time I fell asleep in a dark, dank cave and was tickled to sleep, I would have approximately $1.20, $1.25 if you consider that one time in Reno. As I sit here candying apples and replacing Snickers with laxatives, I wonder, what is your favorite Halloween candy?
I like Twix. I like Starburst. I like Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. I think that's my ultimate favorite. Reese's.
Crackle bars. They're like, I don't know how to describe them, but they get little bits of like puffy, like crispy rice in it. And it's just, I love crackle bars. Whenever I see a little flash of red in the hand that's doling out the candy, I know I've scored.
Definitely candy corn.
Like, you know, when you were a kid and you and your siblings like dumped all your Halloween candy out and like, you know, kind of took inventory of what you had, and your mom picked through and was like, "Oh, this is gonna have a razor blade in it," or whatever. I would save all of my Dots and Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, and those were like the candy to trade with your siblings for. Like, you can have 18 of these if I get 2 peanut butter cups. I love Reese's Peanut Butter Cups, and I love Dots. They're delicious. I don't know why. They're just so good. I don't even think they're real candy. I think it's just like plastic that's colored and somehow flavored, because there's no way those things are healthy or natural in any way.
Probably the individual Reese's Peanut Butter Cups. Not the little ones, like the regular sized ones. Mm-hmm.
The way I met Cherami Leigh was she was recording Cause No Stigma, and I was sitting in with the director, Chris Kaysen, and Halloween was coming up, and she brought up that Hershey's Kisses had introduced a new candy, or a new kiss, which is the pumpkin kiss. And the second I bought like 3 bags and interrupted everyone's recording session and made everybody try this amazing pumpkin kiss. But I love them, which is why I don't buy them now.
Anything with chocolate.
And now a personal account from one of the most terrifying women in voice acting today, Cherami Leigh.
So one weekend I went with my mom and my brother to her best friend's house, which is in the middle of Jacksonville. It's a very old house. It has, I think, 4 stories, including this maid's quarters basement, where when me and my brother were checking it out, we found all these old bottles and things that had just been left. So upstairs, there's this huge playroom that they had built for their young kids, and it has a huge stage that overlooks the property, which I thought was really, really nifty. So I stayed in the room right next to that one on the top floor, and I fell asleep. And there's all these pictures on the wall of people that my mom's best friend doesn't know. But they're all black and white pictures. There was a giant picture that I didn't notice until, the following morning. But I'll explain the evening's events first. So I fell asleep, and I'm sleeping, and all of a sudden I hear this huge crash as the door swings open and slams into the wall, and all the pictures started to shake. And I don't really do well with crazy instances upsetting my sleep. Makes me a little nervous. I get a little paranoid. So I was already a little shaky about the door slamming open, but I thought, it's probably the dogs. They're running around. But I didn't hear any running in the hallway. And since it's the uppermost floor, something would have had to happen for the door to slam open with such force. So then I heard little footsteps and little, I guess what I would think they sounded like little Mary Janes hitting the wooden floor, and the floors were creaking. So I thought, I'm just manufacturing this. It's not real. It's not a big deal. So I got up and I closed the door, and I went back to sleep. And probably a minute and a half later, the door slams open again, and the footsteps are now closer. And so I just laid in bed. I wasn't going to get up again since they were closer, and it was making me really uncomfortable. And then I felt someone breathing right at my ear and my neck. And at this point, I'm like, if there really is someone here, they can feel my heart beating. They can hear it. It's about to beat out of my chest. I'm so terrified. And so I closed my eyes. Wasn't even going to worry about it. Wasn't going to mess with it. And as I closed my eyes, I heard a little whisper. It was like a little kid's whisper. And the voice said, "I'm the little girl in the picture with the teddy bear." And that was about it for me. Wasn't going to mess with it. Got up, walked down the hall. Nobody was there. Went downstairs, slept in the living room. No problems. Fine. Next morning, I go back up there to get my stuff and turn on the lights. And I was like, you know what? I'm gonna look at the pictures. Why not? The biggest picture on the wall was a little girl, about 5 or 6, holding a teddy bear. And I like have goosebumps thinking about it. I clearly got my stuff together very quickly, walked down the hall, went back upstairs to wash my face and get everything together. And I was in the adjoining bathroom, and the lights started to flicker. And at this point, I was like, I'm done. I don't like this house anymore. It's a beautiful house, but I'm not dealing with it anymore. I don't like this little girl. I guess she doesn't like me in a room, but I'm not messing with it. So I took my flat iron. I was like, I'm going to finish curling my hair, and then I'm out. And the outlet that had been working before the lights flickered was no longer working. But the lights were back on, so I pressed the reset button. Didn't work again. So I took my flat iron downstairs. Everything worked fine. And I asked the woman who owned the house, I was like, yeah, the lights just flickered. And she's like, no, they didn't. We were all downstairs, and the lights didn't flicker here. And so apparently they just flickered in that bathroom, just, where I was. So to this day, I will not sleep in that bedroom. And I don't know the story of the little girl. I don't know if I really want to know. But I'm pretty sure that my experience working on Ghost Hunt had its little bit of karmic payback. And I wasn't ready for it. It was a little terrifying.
No, don't. Don't go there. You'll never come out the same. I'm sorry. I was watching one of my favorite Halloween tales, Eat, Pray, Love. What is your favorite Halloween movie or special?
Oh, it's The Great Pumpkin, Charlie Brown. I love that one.
Sleepy Hollow, that's what it is. It's Sleepy Hollow. I love Sleepy Hollow. It's really fun, and I like the dumb song. Ichabod, what a name. Kind of odd, but nice just the same. Like, it's so not Halloween-y, but then it is.
28 Days Later is pretty fantastic and very scary. Just, the more real zombies, like the more immediate threat that's posed there. And also, we all have that inherent fear of the infection itself, which is why I think he made them throw up blood and all that jazz. But yeah, very, very good movie, 20 Days Later. So I would probably put that on top of my list.
Favorite Halloween special that sometimes they have on TV are the old Twilight Zone marathons. Those are awesome.
Hocus Pocus. I love that movie. I had a black cat named Binks because I love that movie so much.
I think my favorite Halloween movie is The Nightmare Before Christmas. And it's incidentally my favorite Christmas movie as well, I think, or at least one of them. But I just love the look of Halloween Town is how I think everybody imagines Halloween looks like. Like that is every kid imagines their neighborhoods transformed into Halloween Town. And I just love it. That film completely captured the look and feel of Halloween for me. And as far as specials were concerned, like TV specials, my absolute favorite was Garfield's Halloween special. I was a big Garfield fan growing up, and there was something about the ghost pirates that just really spoke to me as a kid. But yeah, those two, definitely.
I mean, for me, I think it's a little different than some people because I watch horror movies and, the thriller genre, any chance I can get. I mean, I watch other things, but so I really like sticking with the holiday for Halloween. And a couple of years ago, Tatum decided to have just people over for Halloween. And we had both heard about this movie. It came out in 2007. It's called Trick or Treat. And it stars Dylan Baker and Brian Cox and Anna Paquin. And it's 4 stories, all revolving around Halloween night. And they're all interwoven. And it's based off this short cartoon called Season's Greetings by Michael Dougherty, who also directed the film. And it just gets you in the right mood. I love watching that. And since we've watched it, I watch it every Halloween.
For our next piece, I request that you close your eyes, put yourself into another world, and experience Haunted, a submission by Vaughn, read by Trina Nishimura.
It's your first night in your new apartment. Your stuff is still in boxes. Your furniture hasn't arrived yet. The utilities won't be turned on until the next day, so you're making do without. A flashlight, some candles, will do for light until you go to sleep. Despite the creepy feeling of being in a dark, empty apartment all alone, you chalk it up to nervousness and try to get some sleep. A sound wakes you up. You lay there for a moment waiting to decide if it was real or just your imagination being too loud. When the sound happens again, you check yourself for the time, 2 a.m. You get up using your cell phone for light and make your way towards the kitchen, the apparent source of the noise. At first you think somebody has broken into your apartment, but you choke down your reaction as you stare at the figure. It's a middle-aged man, wearing what amounted to striped pajamas and standing in front of the microwave with his back to you. Although seemingly solid, you can see right through his body. You're paralyzed, mostly out of fear, but partly out of curiosity. "Hey," you finally manage to say. The man looks in your direction, turning slowly. Your eyes open wide as you realize the man has no lower jaw, letting his tongue hang free. Your vision loses focus, and the apparition disappears. A sound wakes you up. It's your phone vibrating against the floor. It's morning, or at least light is coming through the window. You're back on your mattress on the floor, and the missed call is from your mother. You're confused about the night before and still shaking from the experience of what you saw. Was it a dream? Or did you really see a ghost?
Like, oh my God, I was totally there for that. I'm scared, y'all. And now to take a break from all the doom and gloom of the evening, I bring to you a submission from Todd Habercorn. A wondrous piece he constructed and sent in to give us all a little smile.
Someone. Hear me. Please, God. Hear me. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Open your eyes.
I'm trying.
Are you sorry?
Yes. Yes.
Open your mouth.
First, I said I was sorry.
Open his mouth. These are steroids communicate. This is how it feels when you lie.
Fuck you! Fuck you, you piece of shit! Let me out of this chair! I'll show you how fucking sorry I am!
Curious. You didn't seem so sorry when we last met.
I know. I didn't think you would end up like this.
Do you recognize this hammer?
Come on. It wasn't just me.
This is your family. 1218 Eldorado Drive. Correct. Is that the address?
Yes.
I can't hear you.
The boy is 5. He's 5 years old. Would you take that from him?
Yes.
Just kill me. Just me. Just me.
No. I won't kill you, but infection will, dehydration will, starvation will, darkness will. If you're still alive, I'll bring you your son's eyes.
Now, wasn't that fun? I especially love the part about the eyeballs. Look, he's got your eyes. Oh, I am dark. No, sir, I'm not going to give you any candy. Really? You're surprised? You're wearing a t-shirt, jeans, and carrying around a pillowcase. Your wife is in the car. You're not a day under 40. So no, sir, you get no cat. Actually, no, you can have a Snickers. Would you like a Snickers? Here you are. All right, trick or treat. Have a good night. That brings me to another good question. At what age did you stop trick-or-treating?
You were supposed to stop trick-or-treating? Oh, no, I'm just kidding. I stopped trick-or-treating consciously in, like, 7th grade. Like, I didn't trick-or-treat that year. And then 8th grade, I was like, wait, Aaron. And so I started trick-or-treating again. And then I didn't do it junior or senior year, but I did it sophomore year. Yeah. It was always fun to do because, you know, you get your friends together, and then, like, also just the fact that people don't want you to be trick-or-treating, and they're kind of, like, not wanting to hand you their candy because you're too old, and it's funny. I don't know. So, yeah, I did it the last time was sophomore year.
I think I stopped at like 15, actually, because I figured I could do it until my siblings were too old and wanted to stop. And that's the only reason. It would just be awkward if I was the only one trick-or-treating and my little brother wasn't. Sad.
I think I trick-or-treated all the way through high school, actually. I'm pretty sure I did. No, I think senior year I stopped. So I trick-or-treated for a very, very long time. I guess until I graduated when I was 17, so until 16. But I mean, like, I didn't just, like, I wasn't like a jerk face and, like, showed up and I was like, yeah, trick or treat, like, in, you know, like, jeans or something. Like, a couple of my friends and I, Allison and Courtney, every Halloween we'd have a theme. So one year it was like Southern Bells, only my grandmother had made me a dress, so I was a princess that year. And then the next year we were like Army Commandos and like super hardcore, and we had like army clothes and like paint on our face. It was fun. So I think it was 16 when I stopped.
Probably around 14 or 15, but that was only because the neighborhood I went through, like every single house we went to commented on that they thought we looked too old to trick-or-treat, and I was really embarrassed and it was annoying, so I stopped, but it was against my will. Like, I really wanted to keep going, but I was afraid people would make fun of me.
17. Me and my buddies, we grew up in a small town of 3,000 people. What else are we gonna fucking do on Halloween? We were just, we always did it for the fun of going up to some old people after little bitty toddlers had just walked away in costumes, and we come up looking like people from the Matrix going trick or treat.
I stopped pretty young. Being, 5'11" or 6 foot, depending on what convenience store I'm leaving. I've always been tall and looked older than kids my exact same age. So around 10, I was already getting the question from people passing out candy saying, "Aren't you a little old for this?" So I stopped because I was just so upset that I looked so much older.
Before our very own host, J. Michael Tatum, was distracted by my companion Stephen, he recorded this story, a tale that will, knowing Tatum, be quite brief and use very small words.
Okay, so this isn't one of my personal stories, though it does come to me from a friend of mine that I went to high school with, and it has always been one of my favorites because it is absolutely terrifying. So the story goes, and I'm gonna leave people's names and stuff out of this, but this friend of mine, this young girl, who was a couple years behind me in high school, when she was about 8 years old, she lived with her mother, single mom, in this house kind of out in the country. Not exactly out in the country per se, but not very many neighbors and that sort of stuff. This is relatively remote, very small town. And, they lived in this house. It was not a particularly old house from what I remember, but, it was made before she was born, so I guess to her at the time it was old. And it was up the road from a small family cemetery. No relation to her, and I don't know that the cemetery has any bearing on what happened, but it's an interesting fact to note, I think. Anyway, she had a friend of hers growing up that frequently spent the weekends out with them there at this house, and so they were just kind of staying up one late, and the mother had gone to bed, hours before, and they were in her room, my friend's room, just sort of, playing around, doing each other's nails, whatever little girls do, I have no idea. But at some point, they heard noise coming from the kitchen area, the other side of the house, from where her room was, and they thought maybe they had been too loud and woken up her mother. So they thought they'd better go and check to make sure they weren't in trouble or, if everything was all right. And when they went to investigate, the house was dark. Her mother wasn't up and about. There was no one in the kitchen. There was nothing going on. But they were pretty sure they'd heard something, so they thought it best to go and check in on her mother to see if she was, in fact, still asleep. And here's where it gets weird. They looked in on her mother, who was indeed asleep in her bedroom, and, well, doesn't look like she had woken up at all, and she was just kind of lying there. But near the window, which was off to the left of where they were looking in the door, was this figure standing in front of an old, antique Singer sewing machine. Those of you that have never seen one, they're fantastically old, and they have these wonderful wrought iron grating pedals that she used to use to pump them with. And her mother had it just for, show or whatever, but there it was sitting in front of the window, and in front of it is this figure, this about, she said, 3.5, 4 foot tall figure, vaguely luminescent, very childlike from what they could tell. And it looked like it was, that it had its arm up over its head and was like feeling the top of the sewing machine, which was indeed taller than it was. And like the way that, I think you would say, look for a key on top of a door facing or something like that. It was searching for something. And of course they're looking at this thing. What the hell is this? And both girls are just stunned, and they start saying to each other, okay, are you seeing what I'm seeing? I don't know. Are you seeing what I'm seeing? And so on and so forth. And apparently they make enough noise that it gets the attention of whatever this is. And indeed, it turns around and faces them rather abruptly, she said. And she said the look on its face was absolutely horrific, that it had these eyes that you could still see the pupils of, but they were so deeply sunken into the sockets that it looked like just absolutely inhuman. But that its face, that its jaw and its mouth was just twisted into this awful, awful, agonized expression that looked frozen on its face. It just didn't look real. But they said the moment they saw this thing, they just shrieked at the top of their lungs and bolted out of the room back to her room on the other side of the house, where they shut the door and just held each other crying for a few minutes, wondering what the hell they ought to do. And indeed, after a little while, they thought, well, we need to go back in and check on Mom and see what's going on. And I guess they waited a little while before they got their courage up. And when they opened the door to their room to leave, so to go investigate again, thinking it was safe, well, the way she describes this, and I'll never forget this, she said when they opened the door, the thing was down the hallway from them now, with its back turned to them again. But as the light from the door fell across it while they were opening it, the minute the light hit this figure, it turned around again with an even worse look on its face. And the look on its face, she said, now was angry. And it proceeded to then just bolt down the hallway toward them at full tilt, and they had no choice but to just scream and close and barricade the door with everything they could. And there they stayed in their room the entire night, unable to sleep, screaming, crying, wondering what the hell was going on. And indeed, when morning came, her mother came and retrieved them from their room. Her mother was none the wiser for anything that had happened the night before, though she did mention to them that she thought she'd heard them scream at some point, and asked them if that, if she'd been dreaming or if that was indeed what had happened. And they told her the story, and her mother didn't know what to make of it. But, she did separate the two girls and get the same story out of both of them that morning. So at least as far as her mother was concerned, the story was true. And I don't know what that was. I don't know what the ghost was. I have no idea. But that's always been one of the more memorable ghost stories anyone's ever told me.
That's one of the most memorable ghost stories anyone's ever told me. Now, what a delight. And for you, Tatum, all I have to say is... Bring, bring. Oh, what's that? Oh, I believe it's our next story. A delightful tale from our host, Terri Doty. A story called The Caller.
Shortly after graduating high school, I started going to community college. And I was still living at home with my mother and my brother, Leslie. And, it was before any of us had a cell phone. I know. How did anyone function is beyond me. my brother and I, between my brother and myself, the phone line was always pretty much tied up. We both had a lot of friends, and my mom, that was her only phone too. So the phone line was pretty busy constantly, but it took a weird turn once I got out of high school for some reason because my brother was gone quite a lot. He had decided to go to school elsewhere, and my mother was working 2 jobs. So that left me home quite a lot when I wasn't in class or working at the coffee shop. It started one night where, phone rings, you pick up, very scream-like, and the person on the other end just said, hello. I'm like, who are you trying to reach? Who am I talking to? Are you looking for my brother? It went, sure. And I went, what's my brother's name? I'm like, okay, I'm here to talk to you, or I'm calling to talk to you. And that took me back because, it could be a friend playing with me, who knows? But the caller ID said unknown, and most of my friends aren't that fucking smart. Or my friends of the time. No offense, friends now. Friends of the past, fuck you. It took I say it took a weird turn. It was very awkward, but it's very hard for me to hang up on somebody because I know if I hang up on them, they'll just call back, especially when everybody just had a landline. There was no real worry, just calling someone back. And he just proceeded to try to keep me on the line to where I just finally went, look, clearly you got the wrong number, hung up. And then after a couple of weeks, my mom was home quite often. My brother was home. So the phone call stopped. Anytime I was alone, the same guy would call. And, it takes a lot for just anybody to know when you're home, especially if you don't have a cell phone or if you didn't have a cell phone. It would take a lot of foreknowledge to know that, hey, Terry's home right now. And the guy called again. When I was alone, my mom working a double, my brother back out of town, it started with, hey, beautiful. Look, I really don't even know why I bother. You don't leave messages. Why do you keep calling? I said to talk to you. You sound nice. I'm like, yeah, I've got a great voice. Just please stop calling me. And he was like, well, I'll stop calling when I feel like it. Hung up, kept calling, just kept ignoring it. Shortly after this, my father passed away, and I moved away for a while. And, asked my mom about it. No one was calling. And about 8 months later, after my dad passed away, I moved back. Home alone again. Phone rings. Where have you been? I've been away. Really none of your business. What do you want? I want to meet you. I don't want to meet you. Please stop calling me. This is getting fucking ridiculous. Like, are you a friend of Leslie's? This is bullshit. Like, this is a really played out fucking joke. Get a fucking life. I don't appreciate your tone, sweetheart. I really hate being called sweetheart, but I just kind of let it slide because, he could be outside my house. And I said, I'm sorry. I really don't understand why you keep calling me. I really have no interest in meeting you. And hung up. He hung up on me most of the time, which I thought was hilarious, that I didn't even have the wherewithal to hang up on him and just stop answering the fucking phone. Because he would just keep calling. And a couple months went by. Nothing. My friend Nathan comes over. Nathan was kind of a nomad at the time, sleeping wherever his friends would let him sleep. And that night, Nathan needed my couch. So I brought Nathan home. Mother wasn't home. Brother was no longer living there. And get a phone call, which is weird because I'm usually alone. Hello? Who's the guy? Hello? Who's the guy? He knew Nathan was with me. I don't understand how, unless he was just out there, which I completely 100% believe at this point, because Nobody at that time, by that time, I did have a cell phone. People who needed to get a hold of me or wanted to fuck with me would call my cell. Who's the guy? Nathan grabbed the phone, told him off, hung up. Called back. Of course I answered. Nathan told me not to, but dumb fuck that I was. And all he said, I'll change it for the purpose of the story. 503 Cherami Leigh. That's my mom's home, or where I was, where I had no reply. He said, "You're going to continue talking to me, or I'll burn your fucking house down." I mean, what do you say to that? So I asked him what he wanted. Long, awkward pause. "Tell me you love me." What? I didn't stutter. "Tell me." The guy knew my address. He threatened to burn my mother's house down, with probably me and Nathan in it. I told him I loved him and said I love him very much. All he said was, "I know," and hung up. Next morning, my windshield's busted. That was a fun thing to explain to my mother, but she did it. I hadn't told her about the phone calls because she had already had this guilt from years of having to leave me and my brother alone. And so I never told her unless it was absolutely necessary, which it probably was, about this phone call or this caller. We called him just the caller. And months went by, about a year went by. I started working at a different job. I was going to school. I really wasn't home that much. I was actually about to move out. And I get a phone call. All it says is, "I miss you," and hangs up. And I think maybe that's just his way of saying goodbye. Like, even I'm bored of this. No. 7 or 8 months later, I'm living with my friend John and his friend Max, and my mom's going out of town, and I decide to house sit for her. The phone started to ring around midnight, and I had an idea who it was. I didn't answer. Windshield was busted again. To this day, I don't know who it was or who it is. If it was a joke, it clearly wasn't fucking funny to me. I really don't think it was, though. That required a lot of effort for a joke. And even if it was a joke, at that point, it's still not funny. It was terrifying. Most of the time, I can, play stuff off and be like, "I'm not scared, da-da-da." I made no secret that I was very scared. I was never really alone in the house again. Anytime my mother wanted me to come over and house sit, I asked her to find somebody else or whatever she needed sitting that was important to bring to my home. The caller. Fuck you.
Yes, fuck you indeed. Fuck you for such a great story. Fuck you hard. For our next oh, look there. Oh, who's here? Oh, it's Stephen. Hello. How are you? How are you? Who's a good boy? Who's a good boy? Oh, I've got a copy of The Walking Dead. Go get it. Oh, he's delightful. Don't you love werewolves? I do. That's a good question. Do you prefer vampires, werewolves, or zombies?
Vampires, as long as they don't sparkle.
I think I'd probably go with a zombie because it's really, really difficult to bring them down.
I think I would choose vampires just because they have such a romantic, and not romantic lovey-dovey, like romantic and epic storyline through the ages. I think they're very cool.
I'm gonna stick with vampires. Vampires are the coolest because they always have like cool clothes and like look like they're like really like put together. So you know at the very least like they've got their odor issues under control. Vampires. Final answer.
Werewolves are, I don't know, maybe it's that gritty thing I like about guys. It's just the thought of this guy turning into this monster I can't control. I just really like it.
Zombies. You know, a lot of people go like, well, why do you think zombies over vampires or werewolves? And I mean, in all reality, we're talking about 3 fictitious types of animal. So, I mean, get over it. But zombies have always been my favorite. They're the most realistic in that they represent just any kind of disease that humanity's ever had to deal with. And in all the zombie movies, it shows you how fucked up people can be when the chips are down. And I think it's interesting to watch humanity. Not really the zombies, but the zombie deaths are amazing. So, zombies.
Werewolves really kind of encapsulate everything that's cool about the holiday. I mean, they are shape shifters. They change their form, and everyone who's into Halloween does exactly that on the 31st. So to me, werewolves will always be the avatar of All Hallows Eve.
And just like that, our evening draws to a close. It's been fun, hasn't it? I would like to extend a special thanks to all of our guests: Cherami Leigh, Brina Palencia, Josh Greeley, Trina Nishimura, Caitlin Glass, Aaron Dismuke, Ryan Reynolds, Tia Ballard, Alexis Tipton, Ian Sinclair, Todd Habercorn, and Chris Burnett for taking time out of their busy schedules to be a part of this show. To all those who submitted stories, we at That Anime Show greatly appreciate it, you, and all your efforts. And to Terri and Tatum, sorry you weren't able to join me this evening. Stephen must have kept you very busy. I am Victor Costley. Thank you for spending your evening with me. Until next time, I would like to say to you, stay scary. Now come, it's time for my bath.
Hey, Terri?
Yeah.
What the hell just happened?
Oh, you mean at the beginning? Like when we're all running and...
Yeah.
I have no idea. Maybe we're dead.
If we're dead, what does my ass hurt?
God, I hope we're dead.